My friend, while out on a ride yesterday, had a very interesting mechanical problem which we'll demonstrate on my bicycle. My friend was cycling along and suddenly his rear wheel stopped turning, bringing him to a grinding halt. From the front, the chain had not been pulled up by the small chainring, something called chain suck that could grind things to a halt. Looking from the rear, the chain had not been wedged between the chain stays, which can sometimes happen when you are in the smallest cog and shift suddenly from the large to small chainring, nor had the chain come off on the inside and gotten stuck. But we did notice an interesting wobble to the cassette itself. So we decided to take off the rear wheel and take a look. When we finally took the wheel off and looked at the cassette, we saw that the whole cassette wobbled and that the lock ring itself had almost come off and wedged itself between the chainstay and the cassette, which brought everything to a halt. I asked my friend once last time he put on a new cassette, and he said, oh, when I bought the bike about 4 or 5 years ago, I asked him if he ever torqued the cassette tightly each year. He said, no, I never have. So anyway, we're out in the middle of nowhere. To fix this problem, we put the lock ring back by hand, tightened it with our fingers, then using a multi-tool, pushed it as tight as we could, and then went ahead, replaced the skewer, and placed this back on the bike. Once we put this back on the bike, he had no problem pedaling the 20 miles back to our car. What this tells us is we should be checking the cassette. We're doing maintenance every year. Check for wear of the cassette. Also, remove the skewer. And the associated springs. Put those over here. Place your lock ring tool on. Replace your skewer without the springs so it'll hold the lock ring in place. If the cassette is very loose, follow our instructions in the upper right hand corner. Otherwise, if it doesn't seem to move or wobble, you can double check it by using an adjustable wrench and just putting some force, not gorilla force, but just pulling firmly to make sure that lock ring is in place. If you use too much force, you won't be able to get that lock ring off again. Remove the skewer and lock ring tool. Place the spring on. The spring short end or smaller end will face towards the axle. So we'll put that on here. The other spring, again, the small end faces in. Once the skewer has been replaced, we can place this back on the bike. Let me just point out there are other causes of wobbling of the cassette that can also damage your free hub. And the most common is people oftentimes forget on 11 speed, if they're running a 9 or 10 speed, requires a special washer for a 9 speed and a special washer for separate washer for a 10 speed to go on to the free hub before you add the cassette. Otherwise, no matter how much you tighten that lock ring, you're still going to get some wobble. Other things that may look like a cassette wobbling but are not is a wheel that's out of true, or wheel that's not properly inserted into the dropouts. The cassette is nice and tight, but we need another approach for each of those problems. If you have any further ideas, questions, please comment below. Subscribe to keep up with our latest videos. It's Tony of Tony 10 Speed. Safe cycling.